Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Lacrimas Profundere, How to Shroud Yourself with Night, out August 26 on Steam Hammer SPV. The album has 10 tracks, 40 minutes in length, and this the band's 13th full-length studio album. They are a German gothic metal band. I find it really interesting that the title of the record represents the atmosphere of the album, Night. This album is shrouded in darkness. That is the main common denominator throughout the entire record. It has that atmosphere, has that ability to really push itself through. Even in songs that have a little bit more brightness, that have a little bit more light, that feel a little bit melodic, that undertone of darkness is always there. You may change the shades of darkness throughout this record, but you never really completely get rid of it. On the other hand, this allows the album to have a lot of diversity of sound, diversity of experience from song to song. Different starting points, different finishing lines, different constructions, different soundscapes, different vocal performances or different tonalities into that vocal performance, and how you use your vocal range. Everything is moving. This is an album that's never really stagnant. It's an album that has movement at every single turn. It's hard to find a balance between that movement and a sense of cohesiveness. They found it in the atmosphere, and I think that allows the album to have a lot more playability, allows the record to feel a lot more engaging because the album is not fractured. It doesn't feel broken, it doesn't feel discontinued. There's great flow in this album. There's a great sense of engagement from the first to the last song that keeps the listener connected. Even though the path that you're taking, it might be slightly different from track to track, you feel like who's with you in that path stays exactly the same with every single song. And who's staying with you? That darkness, that atmosphere is definitely your companion throughout the listening experience of this record. As far as the sound is concerned, this album offers a lot of variety. Like I said, you see it in the song construction, but you're predominantly going to see it in the sound itself. It has gothic elements, it has doom elements, it has melodic death metal elements, it has rock elements. It has a lot to give. It's an album that has a very rich texture as far as sound is concerned. This allows them to work a lot more freely as far as their creativity is concerned, creating an album that has constant ebbs and flows, that has constant changes. Like I said, very engaging with a great soundscape, a very well-defined soundscape, a soundscape that also allows this album to feel a little bit bigger than its predecessors. It just feels like it has more depth. It's an album with depth of sound, of experience, of atmosphere. I like this record because of it. It feels like a living organism. It feels a lot more emotional. It feels a lot deeper as far as where you're going with the sound, where you're going with the lyrical content, and then where you're going and how you perceive those worlds coming together as one. Now, this is also a record that offers a slight different experience if you're listening to it with headphones or if you're just listening to it on a stereo system. In the stereo system, you're going to lose a few of the key details that are really important in order for these songs to break out of the glass ceiling that they're in as far as the overall record is concerned. When you listen to this album on headphones, you're going to pinpoint a lot of different nuances that perhaps would have gone missing otherwise. You're able to dive a lot deeper into the experience. You're able to digest the record a lot better. You're able to peel the layers a lot better and see everything that is ticking underneath the surface. This is a very interesting record from that perspective because you could skim through the top and you get a little bit of the essence of the album, but you're really not getting as much out of it as you could. The record really depends on the listener. The deeper you go into it, the more you peel, the more you work on it, the more you listen to it, the more you're going to discover. It feels like one of those albums that every time that you press play, you're going to find something that you haven't found before. As far as the overall soundscape, two elements come to the forefront in terms of being the igniters of the experience, of the atmosphere, of everything this album offers, and that is the drums and guitars. I want to start off with the drums because I like the drum sound on this album. I think a lot of that depth of sound that the record has is really in part due to how the drums come across, to how they're recorded, the tonality that they have, how rich they sound. They sound very warm throughout the entire record. Now, some songs, they have a lot more power, they have a lot more aggression. To Disappear in You is a song that showcases how heavy the drums, that's on one side of the spectrum in terms of how heavy the drums could get on this record. But they have variety, they have movement. As the songs move, as the album moves, as the songs grow, as the album morphs, the drums are always there in order to create the right foundation, the right starting point for every single track. but the consistency that they have as far as that depth, as far as that texture, as far as the warmth, really important in order to move this album forward. On the other hand, you have the guitars. I really like the melody on the guitars. I like the melodic side that they have. I also like the heavier side that they offer. And then I like when they go a little bit more stripped down, a little bit more pure, dark, gothic rock and roll sound. There's a little bit of everything to be had. The guitars are as diverse as the overall soundscape on this album is. They really are the pinpoint, or they are the starting catalyst of where the diversity is going to go, of how the songs are constructed, of what's driving them, of what's pushing them forward, and the impact that they have in that overall dark atmosphere that the record holds. So really interesting guitar work throughout the entire record. Perhaps not in your face kind of guitar work. You don't feel like the guitars are driving the album, but when you sit back and you listen to it, you really see how important they are for the drive, for the motion, for the momentum, for the fluidity that this album offers. Now, the vocal performance, in my humble opinion, is outstanding. It's super dynamic. The range is incredible, and what you get out of that range is also really important. It's important from a songwriting perspective, and it's important from an atmospheric perspective, because you have to adjust your tone to the lyrical content, to the mood of the song, to what the track is trying to represent. You can't take a one-size-fits-all, and that's something that I've seen from this band in the past, never really taking that one-size-fits-all approach, and this album is no different. Perhaps a little bit more dynamic than its predecessor across all ranges, but in the vocal side of it, you really see how wide and how broad they can go on an album, but always trying to give what the song demands, always giving the song something that's going to enhance the quality of the track, that's going to add value to the track. I'm a really big fan of the vocal performance on this album because I thought it was phenomenal in order to create images, in order to bring these songs to life. Think of each song as a chapter in a book, and you need that chapter to become real, to become 3D in front of you. And I think the vocal performance, taking a very specific approach depending on where you are, depending on which song you're in, helps in order to define the album. It helps in order to define the individuality of the songs, but when you put it into the collective, that movement, that fluidity, that range also becomes a little bit of the glue that holds the whole album together, because you're expecting that variety to be there. Now, all around, this record is definitely a step up from its predecessor. I hate comparing records. I always feel like you have to look at each album from an individual point of view, but it's kind of hard not to compare with a record that came before, because this album feels a little bit more robust, definitely sounds bigger, sounds heavier, it has a lot more to offer, and it's definitely not one-dimensional. I felt like the previous record perhaps was a little bit too boxed in. This album breaks the boundaries a little bit. It doesn't have as much of a defined path. It redefines its path with every single song, but the journey that you're on, that stays consistent throughout the entire record, with that dark atmosphere that encompasses all 10 tracks on this album. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Nebula. Great thick sounding song from the start. It has a dark underbelly, and the vocals really guide your experience through it. Very emotional journey as far as the song is concerned, and that emotional journey is perhaps better developed or better explained to you from a lyrical point of view, but also from the vocal approach to those lyrics. The sound is there as a catalyst for everything else, but it's there more as a soundtrack of what you're getting out of the vocal performance. The heavier vocals break through this song, allow you to have a moment of explosion, really important, because it creates a difference between the low experience of the song in the verses. The track feels a little bit lower, a little bit more melancholic, a little bit darker, and then the explosive nature of the chorus allows you to just kind of jump into the forefront and break through that. There are some whispering vocals on this track that are absolutely haunting, work really well in the dynamic of the track. They add value to the construction of the song and how you're going to perceive this song from a sonic perspective. Next we have Unseen. It builds more on an electronic backdrop, and I like that electronic sound, because then when the song becomes a little bit heavier, it almost feels like an industrial track. It has a lot of those elements. It has electronic elements. It has really heavy sound from guitars and drums. The vocals also have heaviness. So it's a track that has a lot of heavy elements. But when you have all of those heavy elements moving really well with one another, and you infuse some electronic elements on top of that, you start to change how you perceive the song. You start to change the the overall shape of the track starts to go in a much different direction. So this is a song that stands out because of it. It sounds different, it feels different, it has a different type of heaviness, it has a different type of movement. But I like how all the elements work really well with one another in order to make this song super consistent from that perspective, but still allowing it to stand out in the crowd. Last but not least, To Disappear in You. Talk about a song that stands out in the crowd. This song feels like something out of melodic death metal album. It almost feels out of place in the overall context of the record. I think it's the track on this album, not necessarily the heaviest track, but the track that has more of a death metal, a melodic death doom element to it, that you see it, but you see it better once you go through the chorus once. Once that chorus hits that first time around, and then you go back into the verses, then you start to see how this song is coming together sound-wise. You start to see the heaviness of the track, drums, guitars. You start to see the melodic side of the track on the guitars, on the vocals, the vocal range, what you get in the verses versus what you get in the chorus. Everything about this track has that almost Swedish melodic death metal sound that it's so intriguing, that's so exciting. And when you switch the paradigm of the record, when you add a song with these characteristics on an overall album that doesn't necessarily have this sort of drive, this sort of heaviness, this song really hits you hard because of how different it is. But it matches perfectly as far as the atmosphere is concerned. That's the beauty of this record, is that the songs make you feel something different about them, because the sound experience is different from track to track. But overall, the atmosphere that they have, it's all the same. It's all about that dark blanket that completely encompasses this entire album from first to last song. And this one is a perfect example of that. This is it, Lacrimas Profundere with How to Shroud Yourself with Night, out August 26 on Steam Hammer SPV. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.